Ariel Helwani in San Jose gearing up for UFC 139 alongside an alleged under the weather Dana White. And they tell us today that you were too sick to attend the press conference in San Francisco, excuse me. I was told, though, that you were seen at the Pinkberry here that just opened up. True or false?
Not true. I have not been to Pinkberry. I actually landed here around 4 o'clock and came straight to my hotel. I don't like being around the fighters when I'm sick, so there's no need to go to the press conference and get any of them, give them what I have.
So what does that say about what you think about me, that you're okay with being around me but not them?
I'm perfectly fine getting you sick.
So is this sort of the UFC on Fox hangover, that your body's sort of crashing here after all those nerves last week?
I actually do think that is what it is. I held up through that thing and then got busted up after it.
How does it feel to put that all behind you, especially now that you got that great rating that we just found out 8.8 million it peaked at?
Yeah, no, it feels good. This is where I wanted to be last Wednesday. I wanted this thing to be behind us, and now it's time to get to work. I think that the next 2 years of work we do will be more important than the last 10 we've done, so we're looking forward to it.
We'll talk about UFC on Fox in a little bit, but let's talk about Saturday night. It's UFC 139 at the HP Pavilion, your debut in this area. And I'm just wondering, because of all the work that you put into UFC on Fox, and because this event is coming a week later, do you feel as though that event has eclipsed this one to a degree? And because it's such a great main event, there just doesn't seem to be as many people talking about it because all the focus was on the Fox event.
What you guys have to understand is we're in this weird place right now. We're leaving our old deal, moving into the new deal. We're in this huge, crazy transition period, and all the things that would be going on, on our old network would be helping this fight. We're going to have a rocky end of the year here, and we knew that was going to happen. We were expecting it. We're putting on great fights. It's going to be a great end of the year as far as fights go, but it feels weird to everybody. Like you said, it doesn't feel like there's buzz and this and that. There's a reason for that, because there's a formula for everything that we've done over the last 6 years that we were on Spike, and that's all changing now. It's all completely different. Everything that used to happen is not happening. So there's going to be this weird transition period. That's why I'm just looking forward to January and getting all this stuff rolling.
All right, so in the main event, you've got Dan Henderson making his return to the UFC against Shogun, who when Hendo left 2 years ago, did you ever think that there was a chance he might come back?
Yeah, Henderson and I always had this weird relationship. I like Henderson and we get along, but business is business, and we couldn't come to terms. He went and got fights elsewhere, worked out good for him, and now we're back together. So
it feels like he'll always be this sort of rare footnote in MMA history, because he was one of the few guys who was able to get a better deal going over to Strikeforce and now come back and have a good deal here with the UFC. It seems as though those days are long gone, that it's going to be a while until someone is able to go elsewhere as a free agent. Do you agree?
No, I disagree. Yeah, no. I mean, if you look at, Viacom is involved in this business. These guys are sitting on on what is it, $5 billion in cash. These guys sit on $5 billion in cash. I don't think any of the guys over at Bellator have any trouble getting any money. Plus, Showtime's still in the game too.
But do you really see those guys going out?
And get ready. There's going to be a lot more too. More people are going to be jumping into mixed martial arts. Believe me, we haven't even started to see there's going to be this influx of people coming in again, like it was 3-4 years ago when there was a lot of money out there.
Do you see these people, you don't think they've learned from history and they won't go out and start spending $1 million on fighters per fight? Do you think they're actually going to go out and do that? Because all the people who have done that in the past have ultimately failed.
Yeah, when you're talking about, the comic book guy who went out and started trying to get into MMA, some of these people, you're only going to go so deep, When you start talking about the networks getting involved, it's a whole nother level. When you talk about a company like Viacom being involved in mixed martial arts, and they're a promoter now. Viacom, the company, is a promoter, right? These guys waste more money on pilots than they do with. The money that they spend in MMA is nothing to them compared to what they spend on other regular programming.
What's at stake in this fight? Because a lot of people think that Rashad Evans is still the #1 contender, even though he probably has to fight again. Is there a chance that maybe the winner of this fight would fight Rashad because he doesn't have a fight yet?
Well, it depends on who you're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about Dan Henderson, it's very interesting for Dan Henderson. He could get a title shot at 85 or 205. I mean, the guy, bounces back and forth between both weight classes. There's an interesting matchup there with him with Anderson Silva again, and a chance for him to fight at 205. And for Shogun, obviously a win over Dan Henderson would be so huge for him right now at this point in his career, and definitely get him back in line for a title shot at 205.
All right, in the co-main event, we've got Wanderlei Silva versus Connelly. It seemed after the Chris Lieben loss in July that it might have been the end of the road for Wanderlei, but here he comes back. He replaces Vitor Belfort. I know you never like to talk about this do or die kind of stuff, but what does Wanderlei need to do in order to ensure that he'll be fighting in the UFC come Sunday?
Yeah, it depends on how this fight goes with Wanderlei. I mean, you know what I was saying after his last fight. Wanderlei Silva is a guy whom I really like as a person and respect as a fighter. And I'm just not gonna sit around and watch a guy keep getting knocked out over and over and over again. When I can, there's a lot of controversy over this subject. The Nogueira brothers go crazy when I talk about it, and a lot of other fighters do. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, it's my call.
Is this a must-win for him?
Yeah, he'd listen, if he goes out there and they fight 3 rounds and it's a back and forth battle, I don't know, we'll see. But if Wanderlei goes out there and gets stopped again, yeah, we need to talk.
You've always been a Connelly fan for a couple of years now. He's been to a few of your events. So why do you like him so much?
I've been a Connelly fan since he was fighting on ESPN. I like Connelly. First of all, if you've ever met Connelly, he's such a great guy. He's a good person. He's a great fighter, and I love that he's a guy who came from traditional martial arts and really has been able to make that transition and do well in MMA.
Now let's talk about the third most important fight on the card. You've got Uriah Faber against Brian Bowles. There are some, including Brian Bowles, who have said Uriah Faber gets a little too many title shots. It seems as though he loses one and then he comes back, he wins one, and then he gets another title shot. Does the UFC like Uriah Faber because he's the most marketable lightweight guy out there, or do you think he actually has done enough to keep deserving the spot that he's in here, number one contender fights after another?
Yeah, the guy's talented. He's been around forever. I mean, he held the title for a long time. How could you argue that he's not? It'd be tough to argue that. I mean, every time the kid wins, and if he beats somebody, who's considered a top contender, then yeah, you're still in the mix.
Are these guys fighting for the number one contender fight or spot?
We'll see what happens.
Now let's go back to Fox briefly. Is there anything that you would have done differently now looking back? We're almost a week removed from the event. In hindsight, and I know it's always 2020, but anything that you would have done differently for the first event?
All right, no, I would have done it the exact same way we did it. We did it perfect. I mean, if you watch that show, it came off. It was a beautiful sports production. We went with the heavyweight championship like we said we would. Once those two get in there, you can't control it, how long it's going to go, or what's going to happen. The fight was a knockout. What people don't realize is a lot of things that we have to battle behind the scenes that people don't know about. And, we had people picketing on Saturday out in front of our offices the day that the fight went on. We pulled off a successful event that pulled a great number and, more importantly, no complaints. Believe me, as you start to become more and more successful, the amount of enemies you start to accumulate is unbelievable. It's unbelievable how many people come out of the woodwork, and all these freaks and goofs, and these people need to go out, get a job, or have some kids, or get a life, or do something. It cracks me up how these people will come out. It's a sanctioned sport with great athletes. What should these people not make money? Should these athletes not have the chance to compete to see who the best is, and not be able to make a living for their families too? It's crazy. So it was, when I tell you it was a 100% successful home run show, it was in every way.
Why were they picketing?
Who knows?
Just because the UFC was on network TV?
Yeah, they want us to shut the UFC down, shut it down, and roll up the doors and make the sport go away. Yeah, okay, that's going to happen, yeah.
Those of us at Cage
and you know what they did? What I heard too? Our security guard said that they came down with their picketing signs, right, to picket. A news station showed up. As soon as they did the interview with the news station, they left. So they were out there for maybe 11 minutes. They went out there, waited. The news showed up. They did their interview, and then they all jumped in the car and left. Weirdos. Man.
Those of us cage side saw throughout the night in Anaheim, there were guys in the cage sort of, it looked like they were painting the blood off the canvas. Is that true, and why did you do that? I don't think I've ever seen that at a UFC event.
Yeah, because the main event was the only thing that was going to be on Fox. The main event was the only thing that was going to go on Fox, and if we go on live and, there's blood all over the mat, it was what we did to go live onto Fox for the first time. With just it looked like there was just one fight.
So was that your decision or Fox's decision? Some people thought that Fox was sort of afraid of the blood, that they didn't want to, have people tune in and see blood on the canvas off the bat.
If Fox was afraid of the blood, we wouldn't be in a 7-year deal with them. What Fox are, what these guys do is they're perfectionists about putting on live sporting events. And when we go in with just one fight and the mat looks like we used it 3 times in 3 different events, you know what I mean? They wanted a clean presentation. And when we went on live, these guys are perfectionists. They're the best at what they do.
I know you didn't want to call yourself an analyst, but how did you like being in that role, pre-fight and post-fight, sitting right next to Kurt Menefee? You were in that traditional analyst seat, and I know you don't consider yourself an analyst, but it was a unique spot for you. How did you like it?
Yeah, I don't know. It was it was different. I mean, it was. I looked at it as basically like doing any other interview, but it was a crazy night. I had to stay there all night. I had to run down to the octagon to put the belt on, and then run back up to the table to finish the show. But at the end of the day, what people have to understand is, yes, I'm the president of the UFC, but I'm a fight fan. I love fights. I love talking about fights. I love me and Joe Rogan. You get me and Joe Rogan on the phone of talking about a fight that's coming up, we'll talk for 2 hours. This is what I love to do.
You peaked at 8.8 million. Is a part of you kicking yourself that if this fight would have lasted 3 rounds and you would have had that Bonner Griffin effect, people calling each other up, telling them, you got to check this out, that you could have gone maybe to 10, 12, 15 million people?
Well, it wouldn't even have been the Bonner Griffin effect with people calling each other. There were people flipping over from the game and other things that people were watching. And yeah, if it would have stayed on. But no, we went with this fight. And like I always say, all the bells and whistles and all that stuff we do, once those guys step in there, it's up to them. Whatever happens, happens. That's the beauty of watching a live fight and watching real fighting. You don't know what's going to happen.
There's talk now that the second Fox event will be on January 28th in Chicago. Is that true?
No, it's not January 28th, is it, Craig? Yeah, it is. All right, yeah, it's January 28th.
In Chicago?
In Chicago.
Is there a main event or any big fight lined up for that telecast yet?
Yep, there are. There's a couple of them.
What do you got?
I haven't told Fox yet. I'm going to tell them on Monday. So once I tell them, I'll tell the rest of the world.
How about this? I could tell Fox to watch this clip right now, and they'll find out like all of us.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't think they'd like that. I think they'd prefer to know first.
Is it a big fight?
Yeah.
A title fight?
It's not a title fight, no.
Any other hints you want to give us? At least we can think about it, or no?
It's a great fight. It's a great fight that I think a lot of it's 2 great fights that a lot of people will be interested in. Actually, we're going to go with more fights than that. There'll be more than 2
for the second show.
Yes.
How many in total?
I think 4.
Do you want to give us maybe the 4th one?
No, I don't want to give you any of them until I give them to Fox.
Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen 2. Has a date been pinned down for that one?
We're still working on the date. Fight's going to happen. We're still working on the date.
Did you watch Chael Sonnen's recent interview in Canada and Off the Record?
I saw it this morning.
What did you think of it?
Pretty crazy, man. He's crazy. I mean, I think the guy is nutty as hell. I mean, you go on an interview, you know the guy's going to ask you questions, and especially if you did your homework, you know what Landsberg likes. I mean, he's the kind of guy that jabs you and pokes you and tries to irritate you and throw you off your game when you're doing an interview. Yeah, it was weird, very weird.
2 last quick things before we let you go, and we appreciate the time. Obviously, we're in Strikeforce country here. This is the Bay Area. This is the market that Scott Coker sort of made famous. I know you hate these questions, but I feel like we have to ask if there's any kind of update on the Strikeforce situation.
Yeah, no, I have no updates yet. Believe me, as soon as I do, I'll let you guys know, but I don't.
Okay, and the last one, you sort of made history earlier this week when it was announced that Zuffa is suing the state of New York for everything that's gone on and basically for violating the First Amendment, but not letting MMA be legalized in the state. Where did this idea come from?
Well, I think that everybody knows that what's going on in New York is ridiculous. and it has nothing to do with MMA. It has everything to do with the culinary union. So, I mean, we look how long we've been working on it, going up there, educating people about the sport, et cetera, and when none of that worked, it was time to do this.
Is there any fear that this may ruffle feathers over there and make things even harder for you if it doesn't pan out?
No.
All right. On that note, we say that UFC 139 goes down this Saturday night, live from the HP Pavilion here in San Jose, California. Wanderlei Silva versus Connelly, Uriah Faber versus Brian Bowles, and Mauricio Shogun Hua versus Dan Henderson. Thank you so much for the time, and get well, Dana.
Thank you, brother.